大家好，歡迎收睇呢一集節目。各位咧就早晨午安或者晚安啦。今日咧就英國嘅禮拜三啊，亦都係同以往一樣，正午12點嘅時候咧就有一個國會裏邊咧有個辯論啦。呢個辯論咧就叫 PMQ（Prime Minister Question）。咁啊簡單嚟講咧就係首相嘅答問時間啊。咁啊相當之精彩嘅，每一次都好精彩噶啦。今日咧仲要特別精彩啲喎，因為咧今日個火藥味咧相當之濃咧。咁啊，一間咧就會同大家播幾個片段啦嚇，一個咧就一定唔走得甩嘅啦，就係一個係最大在野黨，咁就係工黨黨魁嘅施紀賢，又睇下點樣同辛偉誠咧就互相質詢咧嚇。今次咧辛偉誠咧都有啲反擊嘅，睇下佢辛偉誠咧點樣講啊。跟住咧亦都會睇下蘇格蘭民族黨嘅黨魁咧，就係又關於脱歐咧又講咗啲話題喎，亦都係攞翻嚟講啦。咁然之後咧，仲會介紹多一個咧，就係都係蘇格蘭民族黨嘅，就 Ian Bradford 嘅。咁咧就佢又提出個經濟問題啦，一間咧會同大家睇睇。今次比較特別啲啦。咁其實咧我每集咧都有睇晒嘅嚇，不過咧就都幾長下啦，就其實係有40分鐘，每次都40分鐘，好準時嘅。咁如果全部播晒咧有啲悶嘅，咁所以咧我就係播翻啲片段俾大家啦，同埋咧有啲地方咧，如果咧係有需要嘅話咧，我就會加以補充啊，即係除咗翻譯之外咧，都會補充翻啲背景資料嘅，希望咧大家聽得明白。好啊，一齊嚟睇片啦，好唔好啊？望一望先嚇，撳條片出嚟。好第一個開始咧就梗係Keith Starmer 啦，就係施紀賢其實通常咧開波都唔係淨係佢講先嘅，不過咧嗰啲通常有兩條咧就係比較 casual 啲嘅問題開波熱身嘅嚇，咁嗰啲咧我就唔講啦。一嚟咧就同大家睇下施紀賢咧點樣同辛偉誠咧喺度針鋒相對啦。
We now come to the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his words about the First Minister of Wales and the sad loss of his wife? Everybody, I think, knows just how close they were, and I know that he's absolutely devastated by her loss at the weekend.
咁首先咧就係同辛偉誠一樣咧，就一同悼念邊一個咧就係威爾斯首席部長嘅妻子咁咧就佢就講話佢兩個人咧以前都好親密嘅，咁大家都知啊，而家真係相當之傷心啦，因為啱啱就過咗身冇幾耐。
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister briefly emerged from his hibernation at the weekend, he raised more questions than answers. So, in the interests of integrity and accountability, can he set the record straight? Did his now former chair tell government officials that he was under investigation by the taxman before or after the Prime Minister appointed him?
咁第一波咧話好到肉啊，即刻問下查學禮啊，因為大家記得咧，啱啱星期日辛偉誠咧就炒咗查學禮，咁咧就同佢嘅稅務嘅問題咧就係相關嘅。咁呢個問題咧，施紀賢咧第一句咧就問佢啦，喂，究竟喺稅局調查查學禮呢件事咧係喺辛偉誠委任佢之前啦，定係之後發生嘅咧？睇下辛偉誠點講。
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I appointed the independent advisor to investigate this matter fully. He has set out his findings in detail over the weekend, and on receipt of those findings, I took action, and I refer the honourable gentleman to the independent advisor's report.
辛偉誠嘅答案咧都估到啦嘛，就係我委任咗一個獨立調查委員會，咁跟住咧就有咗個結果，咁所以咧星期日朝頭早咧一收到個結果咧就即刻採取咗行動啦。咁其實好平實嘅回覆嚟嘅嚇，即係當熱身啦第一條嚇。通常可以問6條嘅，係其實咧就施紀賢可以問6條嘅，咁睇下施紀賢咧跟住點樣跟進啊。
Oh, come on. Anyone picking up a newspaper in July last year would have known that HMRC and the National Crime Agency were investigating months before he appointed him. Mr.
咁第一句咧就喂，大家有睇報紙都知道啦嚇，即係 HMRC， 即係英國稅局咧，好似好早咧已經係調查學禮嘅嘞喎。即係潤呢個辛偉誠。
Speaker, The Independent, 6th of July, new Chancellor's finances secretly investigated by the National Crime Agency. The Observer, 3 days later, 9th of July, revealed officials raised flag over tax affairs before he was appointed Chancellor. The Financial Times, the next day, 10th of July, pressure bills to explain his finances. Is he saying his officials hid this information from him, or was he just too incurious to ask any questions?
咁我司紀賢咧讀咗3份報紙啊，分別咧就係《獨立報》啦、《觀察家報》啦，同埋《金融時報》。咁我讀咗啲頭條出嚟，都係話咧，其實稅局咧就係已經調查緊查學禮啦。呢個咧就講緊上年9月嘅事嚇。咁佢質問啊，辛偉誠，喂，你係咪有啲官員啊隱瞞咗你咧嚇？定係你根本對於呢樣嘢咧毫無好奇啊 ？incurious 啊，curious 就即係好奇啦，incurious 咧對於呢件咧根本咧你完全咧就冇興趣知咧嚇。睇下辛偉誠點樣答佢啦。
Mr. Speaker, as I've said before at the dispatch box, the usual appointments process was followed with respect to the Minister without portfolio. No issues were raised with me at the time of his appointment, but as the independent advisor's report makes clear, there was a serious breach of the ministerial code, and that's why I took decisive action on receipt of that report.
咁啊，辛偉誠咧都平勢咁覆啦嚇，就話咧就係委任查學禮做不公部部長嘅時間咧，就都係跟足程序嘅嚇。當時咧就冇任何資料咧顯示佢有呢個違反呢個係達臣守則啊，或者係其他紀律嘅問題。咁咧就所以咧跟足程序咧就冇問題啦嚇。咁不過咧就係自從呢個獨立調查委員會調查咗之後咧，就個情況唔同咗，咁所以咧就係最近咧就啱啱就係炒咗佢嚇。
So, in relation to his former chair, his defence is, nobody told me, I didn't know, I didn't ask any questions. Is the Prime Minister now also going to claim that he was the...
Order, Prime Minister. Mr Gullis, we...
呢度截停咗先啦嚇，咁我講翻頭先一句先啦，佢主要就係講話，喂，即係辛偉誠採取嘅策略咧，就係、喂，我唔知嚇，冇人話俾我知，我亦都咧就冇興趣知嚇，即係咪就咁嘅樣啦嚇。呢個咧就議長咧就係打斷咗佢講嘢嘅，咁其實咧就係因為有啲係後續嘅議員咧，好似有啲聲音咁，我哋睇電視係睇唔到嘅，不過咧就佢要整理下秩序，咁啊佢講完幾句之後咧，司紀賢咧就會再翻嚟。
Enough last week. I can't hear what you're saying. I might not be able to hear what you're saying, but I can certainly see your mouth moving. It'll be moving outside if it continues. Prime Minister.
So for his former chair, nobody told me, I didn't know, I didn't ask any questions. Is the Prime Minister now also going to claim that he's the only person completely unaware of serious allegations of bullying against the Deputy Prime Minister before he appointed him?
咁佢問辛偉誠咧，為鏡頭一轉咧，就係話：喂，乜都唔知，乜都唔理，咁跟住咧係咪即係去對於呢個副首相都有咁樣嘅態度咧？喂，辛偉誠睇下點樣講啦。
Prime Minister.
So, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman asked these questions about what was known, and I followed due process. I appointed an independent adviser as soon as I was made aware of. As soon as I was made aware of new information, the independent advisers conducted this process. But if he is so concerned about what people are saying and is so concerned about behaviour in public life, then recently one of his own MPs was forced to speak out because being in his party had reminded her of being in an abusive relationship.
呢度咧斷一斷先啦，咁辛偉誠咧就前嗰段咧都係講翻佢講嘅嘢啫嚇，都係跟足程序嘅嚇。咁咧就話風一轉咧，就走去反轉咧，就係攻擊工黨啊！就話咧工黨咧有一個國會議員啊，女嘅國會議員咧話俾人即係abuse 啦，即係話係總之係侮辱啊，類似咁嘅嘢啦。其實呢度咧賴到咧就係工黨之前嘅黨魁啊，郝爾彬啊。咁咧一間咧就會同大家睇下，聽下繼續講咩啦。
And then his own office was caught undermining her. He ought to be supporting her and her colleagues, but if he can't be trusted to stand up for the women in his party, he can't be trusted to stand up for Britain.
咁佢就話咧，即係佢講司紀賢啦，好到肉啦，即係接近個人攻擊咁滯啦。咁咧就話如果工黨你自己黨內個紀律不彰啦，咁有居然有啲女國會議員咧就話自己喺黨裏面咧受到欺凌啦嚇。咁咧工黨裏邊咧對女士唔好啦嚇，即係大約咁嘅樣。咁佢就話咧嚇，如果司紀賢咁咧都唔能夠係即係企出嚟咧為佢哋講嘢咧，喂你點樣咧就幫全國講嘢啊？大約咁嘅意思啦。
Mr. Speaker, at the last count, the Deputy Prime Minister was facing 24 separate allegations of bullying. According to recent reports, some of the complainants were physically sick. One says they were left suicidal. How would he feel if one of his friends or relatives was being forced to work for a bully simply because the man at the top was too weak to do anything about it?
就批評啊，辛偉誠啊，即係講其實都唔係批評佢，批評副首相藍韜文，咁咧就係而家都係受到調查喎，因為咧就有24個指控嘅話，即係喺辦公室裏面咧就係bully 啦，即係點樣講啊？即係可以話係 bully 中文係咪啊？即係侮辱人哋啦或者咧就欺凌人哋都係咁講啦咁佢咧就話辛偉誠你自己咁樣都搞唔掂自己黨咁，你點搞即係全國咧咁啊，辛偉誠咧睇下點樣講。
Mr. Speaker, I noticed he didn't say anything about why one of his own MPs describes being in his own party. And Mr. Niffer, when I was made aware of formal complaints, I instructed a leading independent KC to conduct an investigation because I take action when these things happen. But what did he say at the weekend? He said at the weekend that hate had been allowed to spread unchallenged in the Labour Party under his predecessor. He was speaking as if he wasn't even there. But he was sitting right next to him, supporting him for 4 long years, not challenging. And it is typical of him, Mr. Speaker, declining to lead, sitting on the fence, carping from the sidelines, and never standing up for a principle that matters.
我哋睇 gentleman 拗交咧，就真係有啲唔同嘅樣咁啊好明顯係拗緊交噶啦。而家咧就係但係唔使咁講粗口嘅，咁啊斯文人啦，咁啊大家咧就大聲啲啫，大聲唔代表佢惡啦，係嘛？咁啊首先咧前面嗰部分咧就係講話其實咧我收到一啲咁樣嘅黨內有關啲黨員嘅投訴咧，已經係即刻做嘢㗎啦就會就係即刻揾人調查㗎啦呢件事。咁但係工黨咧反擊施紀賢咧冇喎咁啊話工黨咧之前坐喺施紀賢坐喺 Jeremy Corbyn 啦，即係蓋爾賓當時嘅黨魁啦隔離咧坐咗4年啦。對於咧就喺黨內一啲仇恨嘅言論咧視而不見喎即係大約咁嘅意思啦咁咧就即係其實咧將個箭頭咧射翻去工黨嗰度，睇下施紀賢咧點樣講啊。
I want to hear both sides, and I'm not going to be interrupted by either side. And I'm particularly looking for people who want to continue this, because we will sort it out today. Keir Starmer.
Speaker, he's just like one of his predecessors who treated questions about conduct as something to brush off, who thought that ducking responsibility was a perfectly reasonable response for a Prime Minister. At least in fairness, his predecessor didn't go around pretending he was a paragon of integrity and accountability. But on that subject, was it a coincidence that the 2 people who arranged an £800,000 line of credit for the former Prime Minister were both shortlisted for plum jobs at the BBC and the British Council?
咁施紀賢咧就冇直接講啦，當然咁但係咧又轉咗話題，我講翻咧肥波嗰陣時咧約翰遜接受咗呢一個80萬英鎊嘅一個貸款。咁同一時間咧，佢其實就有傳就話接受咗當時 BBC 主席啦嘅意見啦。當時 BBC 主席咧就未係 BBC 主席嘅就喺佢任內咧就係由肥波咧就係推薦去做 BBC 主席咁咧有利益衝突咧呢單嘢絕對就係咁咧就佢用呢一單嘢咧就講翻佢嘅即係而家就批評緊啦辛偉誠嘅前任其實都唔係前任即係肥波話佢即係其實都係批評緊保守黨啦睇下辛偉誠咧點樣係
Mr. Speaker, as we addressed previously, the appointments process for the BBC chairman is rigorous, it's transparent, it's set out in a public code of conduct, and indeed was fully supported not just by an expert panel members, but also by the cross-party DCMS Select Committee, including where Labour members described the appointment as impressive. But Mr. Speaker, back this week in terms of what is actually happening to the people of this country, he voted this week with the unions to oppose minimum safety levels. He voted with Just Stop Oil to water down the public order bill. And what do the unions and Just Stop Oil have in common? They bankroll him and his party, Mr. Speaker. So while he sides with extremist protesters and union bosses, we stand up for hard-working Britons and school children.
咁辛偉誠咧就反駁翻話 BBC 主席嘅委任咧就係經過一個嚴謹同埋透明嘅程序嘅。當時咧唔止係啲專家組咧都同意嘅，就係委任去做 BBC 主席。咁亦都咧就包括咗個跨黨派嘅一個小組嘅喎。而嗰個小組咧，工黨咧都有人喺度嘅，而且咧就都當時就話呢個委任咧係冇問題嘅嚇，即係OK 啦嚇。咁啊，跟住咧就轉頭一講咧，就話喂，工黨啊，施紀賢咧，即係其實都係完全冇乜關係嘅。不過咧，佢都係即係講埋啦。咁咧就話施紀賢咧就係話施紀賢工黨咧就係而家就唔支持嚇，即係對於一個 minimum service 啦，即係喺罷工期間都維持最低嘅服務。咁啊，嗰度講緊6個範疇，包括咧救護啊、教育啊，左右都有嘅嚇。咁另外咧又批評佢咧話支持有個 public order ordinance 啦，即係話一個公安條例嚇，咁咧就可以對付Just Stop Gas、Just Stop Oil 呢個組織啦嚇。咁咧呢一類嘅即係比較擾亂社會秩序嘅組織咧，工黨咧又反對喎，咁咧就係即係阻住保守黨嘅執政可以咁講嚇。咁其實都過到嘅嚇，都即係佢反對一下咁，但係都唔影響執政嘅嚇。咁啊跟住咧就話即係工黨施紀賢咧就同埋工黨咧就冇乜呢個原則啊，睇下施紀賢咧點樣反駁啦。
After 13 years in power, trying to blame the Labour Party for his failure to sort out the strikes it's rank pathetic. The Tory party's addiction to sleaze and scandal has done huge damage to this country, and the cost to the public keeps adding up. We've got a justice system letting murderers walk the streets, heart attack victims waiting hours for an ambulance, an economy that's shrinking quicker than his leadership. And even I couldn't quite believe it when I saw that his government is expecting taxpayers to pay the legal fees for the member for Uxbridge defending himself over his lockdown rule breaking. £250,000. Surely even this Prime Minister can put his foot down, stand up to his old boss and tell him he made the mess, he can pick up the bill.
我咧就講翻啦，話即係話保守黨執政13年，將呢個罷工嘅責任咧推喺工黨嗰度咧，話真係 pathetic 啊，真係即係真係可憐啊，應該就咁講啊，即係講保守黨可憐啦。咁佢講翻幾樣嘢啦嚇，咁我都唔太詳細咧都唔講啦。最後咧就講咗一單嘢咧嚇，咁啊比較少人留意嘅新聞嘅，咁咧就係要一個組織咧就係要即係批個標啦，就係嗰個同 anti-lockdown 嘅嘢有關嘅嚇。咁睇下咧就首相辛偉誠點樣講。
Mr. Speaker, he can't stand up to his union bosses. He can't stand up for Britain's school children today. And he can't stand up for the women in his party, Mr. Speaker. We're getting on, we're halving inflation, we're growing the economy, we're reducing debt, we're cutting waiting lists, and we're stopping the boat. While he can't even figure out what he believes in, we'll keep delivering for Britain.
咁辛偉誠咧就講話即係好直接啊，咁樣就講話施紀賢咧唔能夠係即係企出嚟咧幫呢一個係女士啦，即係工黨裏邊嘅女士啦，即係講即係女議員被呢個欺凌啦嚇，咁小朋友啦，因為今日停課啊嘛嚇，咁亦都咧就唔能夠即係對得住佢嘅 Paymaster， 即係佢嘅工會嘅老闆喎嚇，即係講咗好多次啊，差唔多次 BMQ 咧都有講嘅。咁之後辛偉誠咧講翻佢自己5大訴求啊，咁啊即係話係即係減通脹啊、刺激經濟增長啊，諸如此類咁樣嚇。好啦，嗱呢部分咧我就講住咁多先啦，跟住咧我就跳過去咧睇下 Stephen Friend 啊，咁啊就係蘇格蘭民族黨，其實好短時間後面就有啦嚇，大約呢個時間，咁啊睇下佢講啲咩啦，佢又講脫歐嘅，咁大家咧有對脫歐啊入歐咧有興趣嘅朋友咧真係要聽住佢講嘢。
General practice in each local area.
Leader of the SNP, Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to pass on my condolences and indeed those of my party to the First Minister of Wales and also to the family, friends and colleagues of firefighter Barry Martin, who so sadly lost his life following the blaze in Edinburgh just last week.
咁呢段就係即係悼念翻係威爾斯首席部長嘅夫人嚇。
Mr. Speaker, we've just marked the 3-year anniversary of Brexit, and we've learned. They'll not be cheering in a moment, Mr. Speaker. because we have learned three things. The UK's trade deficit has grown. The economy is being hit to the tune of £100 billion each year. And of course, we know that the UK's economy is expected to be the worst performing of all advanced nations. Does the Prime Minister still believe that the UK can afford not to be in the European Union?
咁Stephen Flynn 唔好意思冇中文名我都可能要 email 問一問佢有冇中文名先嚇。咁咧就悼念過後之後咧就講話而家脱歐3年嚇，英國咧係有3件事發生咗。第一咧就係嗰個係國債就係創紀錄啦嚇，而且咧每年咧仲係即係第二樣嘢咧就係每年100個 billion 嚇，即係每年咧就嗰個經濟咧縮減喎嚇。咁第三樣嘢咧佢講啲咩咧？唔好意思都聽多次先。要寫低先啦，下次。
We have learned three things.
第三樣嘢咧就係話英國嘅經濟咧就係喺所有先進嘅國家裏邊咧係最差嘅。咁呢個咧都係最近嘅新聞有報導啦嚇。咁佢就問咧佢問辛偉誠咁究竟即係咪英國係咪可以負擔到呢個脱歐嘅代價咧
？Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if you actually look at it, since Brexit, the UK has grown exactly the same as Germany has, Mr. Speaker. But not only that, we are taking advantage of Brexit to deliver for the people across the UK, whether it's the fishing and farming communities of Scotland, whether it's through the 2 new free ports that we've just announced. But, Mr. Speaker, the difference between his party and ours is that we respect referendums.
辛偉誠咧就講一樣嘢喎，佢話自從脱歐之後咧，英國經濟增長其實同德國差唔多啊。嗱呢樣嘢咧，我諗首相講得出嚟咧，佢梗係有少少根據嘅嚇。不過咧，我就即刻就好難理解到呢樣嘢，因為之前都講咧，就其實脱歐冇幾耐，脱歐即係話你講緊係2021年開始計啦嚇，即係其實睇你邊一點開始計嘅啫。咁一般咧而家係由話即係疫情前開始計咧嚇。咁英國經濟增長咧應該就冇德國咁多嘅，不過你話計脱歐當日開始計咧，咁我就唔知啦，因為你個 series 個比較咧可能唔同嚇。咁佢咧就佢又冇直接講話即係英國經濟增長有啲咩嘢啦，不過佢就話即係脱歐咧就帶嚟一啲好嘅好處嚇。咁嗰啲咧我諗都蘇格蘭民族黨未必好同意係嘛。咁咧就亦都係即係農業啦嚇，漁業啦咁嗰啲咧都係有啲作為嘅嚇。咁佢話咧就保守黨同埋蘇格蘭民主黨嘅分別就係。保守黨咧係尊重呢個係脱歐公投，咁言下之意咧就即係話蘇格蘭民族黨咧而家次次講脱歐咧就唔係好尊重啦。
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. Taken together, 2022 and 2023 are expected to be the worst years for living standards since the 1930s, and the economy is expected to perform worse than sanction-hit Russia. So as the Brexit ship sinks, with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition at the helm, does he blame those Scots who want to jump aboard the independence lifeboat?
咁佢話咧就set 翻個 record straight， 可能佢都係即係留意到辛偉誠講話英國同德國經濟增長差唔多嚇。咁佢咧就話其實計2022年同埋2023年呢2年即係夾埋嚟計咧，就英國增長咧就係比其他地方咧都係要差嘅嚇。咁咧就亦都講到啦，即係其實而家蘇格蘭民族黨佢之前即係一向希望就係蘇格蘭獨立啦，其實係想跳船嘅啫，跳喺一個救生船嗰度，喺個獨立嘅救生船嗰度嚇。咁咧就都講翻呢樣嘢啦，睇下辛偉誠點樣覆佢喎，點樣答。
Well, Mr. Speaker, the number one factor that is impacting people's living standards, inflation, caused by high energy prices as a result of a war in Ukraine, Mr. Speaker. It's got nothing to do with Brexit, and that's why the government is taking significant action, supporting every family with £900 this winter. But what I would say to him is, rather than obsess about constitutional arrangements, focus on delivering for the people of Scotland. That's what we will do.
咁辛偉誠咧就講翻就其實影響經濟最重要嘅問題咧就係呢個通脹，而通脹點解咁高咧就係同能源價格有關嘅。咁佢哋而家英國保守黨政府嘅目標咧就係降低通脹嚇，即係希望即係減半啦。佢之前有講過，咁咧就所以佢大約嘅意思就係咁樣啦。好啊，跟住咧再播多一段啊，最後一段啦，就去到28分啦。呢個我咧我介紹少少先啦。呢個人物咧。你撳翻出嚟啊！呢個比較身材魁梧嘅人啦，咁咧就叫 Ian Bradford 啦。咁咧就係一間你會聽到咧就好長嘅一個係 我唔知咩聲咧，叫歡呼聲啊，定係噓聲，唔知點樣歡呼聲嚇。咁啊 Sorloff 係歡迎佢嘅，因為咧佢係以前就係 Stephen Friend 個位嘅嚇，就係蘇格蘭民族黨咧嘅黨內發言人，喺國會裏邊嘅發言人嚟嘅嚇。咁咧就不過咧佢就隱退咗。咁啊今次咧如果冇記錯，應該係自從佢隱退之後咧，第一次喺國會裏邊咧就係再發言嚇。咁所以咧我由翻佢大家歡呼嗰下咧嚇開始播起啦。
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that welcome. Ordinary people didn't need to hear an IMF forecast to understand that the UK economy is the worst performer amongst the leading nations in the world. They live with it every day. People know their energy bills are through the roof. They know that 750,000 households face defaulting on their mortgages while house prices fall. And they know that food prices are rising at a record rate of 16.7% as of today. The Prime Minister is 100 days in office, his party 13 years in power. In all that time, does the Prime Minister ever reflect that the only thing that the Tory party has been good at is pushing people into poverty?
咁佢咧就首先引述翻 IMF 嘅講法啦，佢話大家都唔使睇 IMF 都知啊，其實英國咧而家經濟就好差，咁係最即係咁多個發達國家裏面咧增長最慢啦嚇，咁幾樣嘢發生嘅，能源價格又相當之高啦嚇，咁咧亦都市民去到面對唔同嘅問題啦，即係通脹問題啦，咁就食物價格咧增加咗16%啊17%左右嚇，咁咧佢話咧就係保守黨唯一做到嘅嘢咧就係令到人變得更加貧窮嚇，即係都好直接咧就即係批評呢個保守黨啦，睇下辛偉誠點樣覆佢。
Mr. Speaker, it is wonderful to hear from the right honourable gentleman, and love to see him in his place. What I would say is that we're continuing to deliver for people across the UK, including and in Scotland. He mentioned poverty. Poverty today lower than when the Conservatives first came into office. Inequality lower than when the Conservatives first came into office, and the number of people in low pay the lowest on record.
辛偉誠咧就話講經濟增長咧，保守黨都係非常之着重嘅嚇。咁咧就係而且咧佢舉咗3樣嘢話，就話即係呢個係貧窮嘅比率啦嚇，嗰個同埋一個低收入嘅比率咧，其實而家都係即係英國裏邊咧就係最低嘅嚇。咁啊，跟住咧就應該啲人就冇再跟進啦。咁啊，今日咧就講到呢一度先啊，睇下大家有冇啲咩 comment 係咪好刺激啊？喂，俾我睇睇 comment 先嚇。咁咧就英國未來日子會持續罷工，全英所有學校停課。咁我諗唔會嘅嚇，咁誇張嘅嚇。大家好啊，好激嚇，今日都幾激下喎。嗱，其實大家留意下嗰個國會裏邊啦，即係下議院嘅首相答問呢個環節咧，通常咧頭一段咧就好激嘅嚇，到後面嗰段咧就輕鬆翻少少嘅嚇。因為頭一段咧通常有一個安排咧就係頭先有2條就冇乜關係嘅問題啦嚇，首先保守黨提出1條咧，就叫首相講下今日嘅行程點樣。其實我都唔明點解次次都要問呢個問題啊。咁啊，跟住咧有一個係保守黨黨友問嘅問題啦，跟住咧就到 Keith Starmer 施紀賢。咁施紀賢同埋辛偉誠之間咧嘅辯論咧就係最激嗰部分嘅啦。咁然之後咧就隔咗幾個國會議員之後咧，又去到 Stephen Friend 就係第3大黨嚇。通常2條或者3條問題咯嚇，咁咧就係都有時咧都幾尖酸刻薄嘅嚇，幾激嘅嚇，即係 Stephen Friend 去即係講嘢都幾直接嘅嚇。咁啊，另外咧就而且大家留意到咧，如果係通常保守黨啲國會議員即係講嘢嘅時候咧，就通常就溫和啲嘅嚇，有時都會問一問辛偉誠嘢啦嚇。咁但係咧，好似有時我覺得係夾定咁樣嚇。咁啊，就算咧就有少少衝突咧，都係好細嘅啫。咁啊，其他黨例如工黨啊，同埋呢個係蘇格蘭民族黨或者其他黨派咧，就問辛偉誠嘅嘢咧，就比較尖鋭一啲嘅嚇。咁啊，如果大家有時間你都可以自己咧就上翻 Parliament TV 啦，或者喺呢個232號台咧就睇翻呢個足本嚇。咁啊，232號台咧因為過咗直播啦，而家就可以睇翻 freeview， 咁佢有啲節數咧就選擇翻出嚟㗎。當然亦都一個好簡單方法喺 YouTube 上面咧，你打 PMQ Today 咧，咁亦都係好容易揾到㗎啦。好啊，今日咧就好似都冇乜其他 comment 係嘛，係要維持秩序係嘛。 係冇錯係。我諗咧嗱，我頭先就因為唔喺現場聽唔清楚啦，我覺得就好似係保守黨後席有啲後座議員咧喺度 boo 咁樣啦，係嘛？即係咁啊，英國議會裏面咧就應該唔準嘅，咁所以咧就議長就係維持秩序咧，就同佢講兩句咯睇下佢點樣處理自己國民生活水準啦，係嘛？係啦，咁啊都要留意下啦。嗱，今日節目咧講到呢度麻煩大家臨走之前咧幫我撳翻 like 先啦，點讚、分享、留言同埋訂閱翻胡思頻道可以嘅話咧，可以就係加入成為胡思頻道嘅 YouTube 會員。咁咧每個月最少咧就係1英鎊啫。咁稍後時間應該下個禮拜咧都有嘅。咁再同大家咧就報道翻 PMQ Prime Minister Question，因為英國下議院咧就每個禮拜最重要嘅時刻啦。拜拜。